Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Now my guy's here. He is the best, right? In this business, there's just certain people you just look at and go, yep, there's one of the greats. Tim Brando, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to be back with you.
I think Kent State, maybe Buffalo, last couple of times you were in here.
Yeah, I think that was the last one. I was asking your producer, what year was that? Do you remember? I think that was an opener, or close to an opener, maybe the second or third week.
Yeah, something like that. So it's just good you're going to get back in here. And not only that, it's a Big Ten game.
Yeah.
On top of that.
So I'm excited about it. I am.
Yeah.
I'll get the full Happy Valley treatment this time. Right?
Yeah, you'll get the full treatment this time as to what's going on. Conference game. You get to pronounce Tagovailoa all day. That's great. The last
really meaningful game, big time game that I did was pre-Big Ten. It was the late Vince Dooley and I came in to do it, and Major Harris was coming off a run to the national championship in the game against Notre Dame the year before.
Yep, Fiesta Bowl.
Fiesta Bowl.
Yep.
And so it was the '89 season, and Penn State, West Virginia was a big game. And it was a great environment. I want to say it was a little bit wet. I've had a little rain on the terrain there in Happy Valley.
Yep.
And it was just a wonderful place to be.
Oh.
Penn State, and that stadium is a fantastic one, and it was one of the very few, Steve, I was familiar with when I started doing Big Ten games. I'd never been to the Shoe. I'd never been to the Big House. And but I had been to State College, and it's obviously a much bigger place now, much more vast, over 100,000 now. It wasn't at that time, but Beaver Stadium is, I don't care how many people are in the stands. Beaver Stadium is hallowed ground.
Yeah, well, let me give you a fun side story on that '89 game. Right, they come into now the year before, and I don't have to tell you, Tim knows.
Yeah.
West Virginia was great, and they beat Penn State down in Morgantown. So they come up into Beaver Stadium, and of course the Mountaineer comes in, and he has the gun. Right? And Joe Paterno sent out instructions to the people. He says he's not allowed to fire that gun in the stadium, and they're following him all over the place all day. As a side note, I'm sitting in the broadcast booth going, okay, that's don't watch it. Don't watch that.
Well, I had my Penn State opportunities before I got into the booth. I was sort of the host/sideline guy on CFA football in '86. That was a big introductory season for me at ESPN. It was before we started College Game Day, and I got to call from the sidelines and host Penn State at Boston College. I'd come down for a Penn State game at home. Oh, my gosh, that same year, and I'm trying to remember who it was that played, but it was in the '86 season. Mike Patrick and Pat McAnally were calling the games, and I was, 30 years old and just a little raw, a little green, and my quest was to get my quest, literal quest, was to get Joe to stop, to get Bud Tallman, the SID at that time, to get Joe to stop so I could interview him when the game was over. And Bud told me that I would be, and this was a game that was, it might have been, in fact, I think it was maybe, it was at West Virginia that particular year, I want to say. We might have been at West Virginia, the '86 game that Penn State played West Virginia.
Penn State shut them out. Penn State shut them out. Yep.
Yeah, Bud told me if I wanted to get Joe, I would be very wise to go out to the team hotel on Saturday morning and do his brother George's radio show. I'm telling the truth, okay? Yeah. And I said, okay, well, where are you guys staying? And it was, Morgantown didn't have a lot of places. Yeah. And to get anywhere from Morgantown meant, as many two-lane highways as you have coming into Happy Valley, okay?
Yeah.
So I got up at dawn and began my drive to the hotel to visit with George. And I don't know who the co-host was, but, I just knocked on the door of the hotel room and went in and did the show. And so now the game's over, and I'm running towards Bud. And I said, Bud, I did the show. Now get him.
Because
that was the thing, was just getting Joe. Joe was running. He was always running. And Bud had to run him down from behind him, and he was like, no, he's tough. But Brando did the show with George. So
and you know where it was? It was in Washington, PA. It wasn't even in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Because that's where he stayed. I was like, my goodness.
Yeah. But I have
goodness.
Those are great memories. I've got some old pictures from that I'll be putting out on social media tomorrow.
That's awesome.
You can take a look at them.
That's great. Hey, what do you think of the state of college football is right now? You go around, you see it all the time. You have definite opinions of it. Now the college football playoff rankings are out. So what do you think? How good is the game right now in your opinion, pro and con?
Well, I think it's wonderful. And all the doomsayers back in the summer that were saying, oh, the NIL and the transfer portal is just killing the game and it's awful. It's not the game that we remember and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm sorry. Those same people, and I know who they are because they're all of my generation. Most of them were, 60 or over, predicting this doom and gloom. And I'm like, did you enjoy last week? Yeah, those were unbelievable games. And, they were. College football is always going to deliver, and if you're looking at it solely from your team's point of view, you may not get it. So, as you know, I don't root for any teams. I may root for a few people that I like more than others, but I don't root for teams. I do root for the game. I want the game to grow. I want the game to be bigger and better than it is. And I think we're well on our way to that being the case. I'm frustrated, as I always am this time of year, when the committee has these godforsaken Tuesday night shows. Fortunately, most of America was watching election coverage last night, as opposed to watching the dog and pony show that poor Reese Davis and all those game day guys have to do by contract. I know they don't want to do it because all you do as you watch that show is get pissed off. There's a level of pissed off after one segment, and then by the time they get to the third block, you're ready to just throw, substances at the television set, when you hear these conversations. And everybody involved, including Boo Corrigan, who is the late, great Gene Corrigan's son, who was a outstanding athletic director at Notre Dame and later ACC commissioner, was one of my dearest friends. And Boo and his brother Tim, who was a producer at ESPN, they're both great friends of mine. But, I mean, they give him these talking points, and he contradicts himself with every statement. Every guy that's ever been in that position contradicts himself with every statement he makes. And they're just talking points that make no sense. And until we go to 12, and I really believe before we get to 12, I think they're going to settle on 16. That's my little
I agree. Yeah, you and I agree on that. Yep.
I think television is going to force them, when they look at the numbers, Steve, they're going to realize how much money they're leaving on the table by not having more volume and inventory, and what the heartache for teams 1 through 4 that don't get a home game, and teams 5 through 8 that do. So why not allow 1 through 4 to play and give 13, 14, 15, and 16 a shot? You don't, you've got a bye week in there. You're not going to lose any, it's not going to make it any longer, the process. You're just going to have more games, and more games means more revenue. So I think they will settle at 16 when they finally get to that finish line, whenever it is, but between now and 2026. But the state of college football, in my opinion, has never been better. And the coaches that have learned and embraced the changes that have been brought forth from NIL and the transfer portal are doing really well. And those that aren't or haven't are struggling with it. And if they're at a point in their careers where they feel like, I just don't want to go through this, then they can retire. Okay.
Yeah.
And if they aren't, then they're going to have to embrace it. They're going to have to adapt with the times, and I think for the most part they have. So I feel like the state of the game is really good. We need to regulate the portal. That's I think everybody understands that. And if these 4 Senate elections that are still out there end up in the Republicans' corner, then I think we'll find a way to get some regulations done. I do. I think if two parties are at a tug of war, I think that it's going to be hard to get anyone to listen to something as trite as an issue in college football. But I think if you have one party in control of both the House and the Senate, I think there'll be some willing ears in terms of trying to protect the game of college football. So we'll see. But I do think that it needs to happen, and it's not like the ship is so far out to sea that we can't get it into more calm waters. I think we can find a way. You're not going to bring it. You're not bringing the ship back into the dock, but you need to find some calmer waters for what we're doing with the transfer portal, so we can stabilize it some. That's what's needed.
Right. I agree completely with that. Any thoughts on, and as you've done your homework on this Penn State football team to this point?
I love the way Clifford has responded, and what was I think going to be a very difficult year for him if he hadn't stepped up. I think you guys, for the most part, if you can get the run game going, I know this sounds cliche, but if the run game is there, then it opens up so much more for you. Yep. I frankly thought the Ohio State game was yours to take. I thought you just sort of gift wrapped it at the end. And, of course, Ohio State had a lot to do with that. Their defense is so improved under Jim Knowles. And, they fooled Penn State a few times with their coverages because of what Knowles does. He takes some chances, and they were able to convert on some of those chances late in the game. And I thought that's what turned it. But I think this has been a much improved Penn State team this year. I think James has got to be really happy with the progress made. Now it's about finishing the deal. You've got a good season underway that could end really great for you if you can run the table. But look, this bunch coming in here is going to put some pressure on your defense. They've got some really good skilled players and a quality quarterback. So, and they're smarting a little bit after what happened with Wisconsin. They got shut down in ways that they haven't been in preceding weeks against anybody. So, and at the same time, Penn State can kind of look at what Wisconsin did and say, okay, we see some weaknesses there, and we should be in good shape. Contrasting styles, too, Steve, which should make for a very entertaining game. Spencer and I are really looking forward to it. We've been spending most of our weeks lately in the Pac-12 and Big 12, so we're really happy to be back in the Big 10 with a game that should have a lot of eyeballs coming off Big Noon. That's generally a good spot for the next game to get a really good rating. So we're enthused and happy to be there.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you. Thanks so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it, Tim, and I can't wait to see you on Saturday.
Well, I'm just sorry I was a little bit late to the party. When you become a granddad, your daughter calls and she suddenly needs you to do something because the 5-year-old is sick, and we got to pick up the 3-year-old who was at the getting whatever done, and so boom, you just do it, and that's what Big Daddy B does for his grandkids.
Guess what? I have 7.
Back home from that.
I have 7, so I know.
Not grandbabies.
7 grandkids. Yes.
No, Steve, you're kidding me.
Yes.
Wow.
No.
My goodness.
No.
From how many kids? How many
5.
children?
5. 4 of the 5 have children.
Okay. All right. Well, I only had 2 girls, but they've given me 4 grandbabies.
What a blessing.
It's a blessing. It's so underrated.
Yeah.
It's so underrated.
You cannot overrate grandkids. You cannot. There's no such thing.
That's right. Take care, my friend.